Alrighty, Low for Life here, bringing you guys a brand new video, and today we got a top 10 rogue decks for the April 2020 format. I know that, this is kind of pointless since there's no tournaments whatsoever going on. Heck, Worlds just got canceled, that's wonderful. But, however, I still wanted to bring this up because playing rogue decks is like my passion. You know, I'm low tier for life. I like playing low tier decks. And heck, due to that, I've played just about every deck out there. So I feel like I know my stuff whenever I'm saying, like, oh, hey, this deck's good, that deck's not so much. Or at least that's my own personal subjective opinion, but I digress. So I wanted to put together this top 10 list looking at the current format, the previous one, what looks to be good and what doesn't. And so kind of just put together a little list. Now, I will say, again, this is my subjective opinion. I put on some interesting choices that I wanted to bring up because they recently got some support that really makes the deck a lot better. So this is more of an encouragement to give a deck a try, really, more than anything. Also, I should call this top 11 because there's a tie for number 1. I just could not decide, okay? It was really, really tough, and I'm like, okay, screw it. I'm just going to make them a tie. So anyway, let's get on with the top 10 rogue decks for April 2020. Starting with number 10, Gagaga. This is at the lowest because it's got a lot of issues, but however, the deck got a lot of really good support recently and over the course of Master Rule 4 that really enables it to be able to do a lot more than it used to be able to before Master Rule 4. Like, heck, if they had gotten the support that they got during Master Rule 4 before Master Rule 4, the deck probably would have been actually, like, a really good, like, rogue contender. Like, I probably would have put it at, like, a 3 or 4. But, however, of course, we're in a different time. We're in a different... we're finally free of the Link dominance... Link Tyranny. There we go. That's what I was trying to say. I was going to say dominance, but whatever. Link Tyranny, and able to summon Xyz monsters in the main monster zone once again. So, that being said, this Xyz focused archetype's able to play as it should be, and it works really good, honestly. Especially with the newest support. The newest support really encourages you not just playing Gagagas, but also the other onomatopoeia archetypes, that being Go-Go-Go, Do-Do-Do, Zubababa, Acha-Cha, all that fun stuff. You're mainly focusing on Gagaga, Go-Go-Go, I think Do-Do-Do, and possibly a little bit of Zubababa, but however, not that much. Really, honestly, it's kind of like Heroes where you got a little bit of everything and it just works really well for some reason. That being said, the biggest reason why this deck works so well is the rank 4 pull. Yes, this deck can, because of Gagaga Magician's effect to manipulate his level to any level from 1 to 8, can hit any level between there, and you might think about maybe playing 1 or 2 level 8, rank 8s or rank 7s or something, you know, like Titanic Galaxy, Big Eye, something like that, that's really good. But for the most part, you're focusing on the rank 4 pull, because you got access to Abyss Dweller, the Tapir guy that switches everything to defense, Daigusto Emerald, Utopia, Castel, you know, you got all those really good rank 4s, and by Utopia, I mean the Utopia package. Okay, not just Utopia himself. So you got this access to all these really good rank 4s that allows you to basically be able to control the board. And that's really what this deck wants to do, is you want to go first, you want to set up a good controlling board, and then whenever it switches back over to your turn, you're going to make a Utopia, whether that be Lightning, you try to go for damage with that, or Utopia Double to go for a oh-so-wonderful double or nothing play to go for an OTK. It works really well for what the deck wants to do. The deck got a lot of really good support in Gagaga Bancho, or I think that's, something like that. And those cards, along with the other one whose name I'm escaping, who's basically the inverse of Gagaga Bancho, work really well with just being able to special summon themselves from a hand or graveyard and then summon more dudes from the graveyard. It's really, really good, and the deck got a really good search card as well that has another, pretty decent side effect, but you're mainly using its search effect. So, that being said, this deck has 2 big issues. It's really only good going first. If you're going second, you can possibly pick apart your opponent's board or make an OTK, but it's not as easy. Secondly, this deck can be bricky from time to time. It does have a really good search card, but however, actually it has 2 really good search card cards and a decent draw card, but however, even with those, because a lot of the search cards aren't searchable, you gotta rely on opening them going first, and that really cannot be very good. So this deck is needed for outside draw support like Desires and stuff like that. So this deck works really well whenever it wants to, and due to that, I'm putting it at the absolute lowest, because I feel like it's a decent deck that's a really fun rogue deck. Maybe for locals and stuff, if you get a really good build rolling, maybe take it to a regional, but this is a really good locals deck, I feel, for being fun. Next up, we got number 9, my board Cubics. So I wanted to put Cubics higher. I really did. I love this deck to death. I've done 2 deck profiles in the past 2 months of them. One before the Dual Overload support and one after, and the deck is just so much better now with the recent support. It's able to make really good going second boards, and heck, Crimson Nova is one of the scariest boss monsters for a lot of decks to deal with, because he's flat out unaffected by all monster effects with less than 3,000 attack or equal to 3,000 attack. So hey, Boral Sword, you aren't doing anything to this guy. It's really good whenever you're going second, and whenever you don't brick like hell, okay? So, that was the big contending issue. Not to mention, there's just better decks overall that are just objectively better that I've put ahead of Cubics. I can't let my personal opinions on Cubics make me put them higher. I really wanted to. If it was truly subjective, I'd have this at like number 3, but honestly, I had to really look at it critically and say, no, Cubics are not that good. So the biggest issue, while yes, the deck has very powerful boss monsters, has very good recent support, and is able to steal wins out of seemingly nowhere, the deck has 2 big issues as well. First and foremost, like with Gagagas, it sucks going first. Okay, well, actually, no, it's the inverse of Gagagas. It sucks going first. You want to go second. You want to be able to summon that Crimson Nova, punch for big damage, end phase, burn both players for 3k each. It's mean, it's powerful, it's fast, and it is clean. But going first, you're oftentimes just summoning Duza, sending the trap card, or heck, if you're lucky, like summoning out the gadgets or summoning out Summoner Monk, getting the Duza, and then making an Xyz. Like, again, I cannot remember that tapir's name, the one that like switches everything to defense. So it sucks going first at this deck. It does not have any good going first plays. And also, while yes, this deck has big time boosts to its consistency thanks to Dharma, Summoner Monk, draw cards like Desires, Extravagance if you have the money for Extravagance, this deck's, it can brick hard. I am talking bricking so hard you could build the Empire State Building. It is that bad. Like, it is, whenever it bricks, you feel it in your soul, and that is just sad. So no amount of, optimizing this deck like I have spent 2 years optimizing this deck, or however long it's been since it came out, optimizing this deck, and even with the new support and everything, it still has consistency issues from time to time. And that bricking can really prevent you from doing well in a tournament. If you get lucky and you don't brick, you could easily, well, I won't say easily, you could do well in a locals or regionals, okay, if you don't brick. But because it does have that chance of bricking, I can't put it higher. I really can't. That's the big thing that really keeps me from putting this higher up. Heck, I almost honestly put them lower than Gagagas, but Gagagas, it just doesn't have the powerhouse that the Cubics have, because basically you're solely relying on getting Crimson Nova out. Heck, if you do against somebody who randomly plays Prohibition and they call Crimson Nova, you might as well scoop. Unless you get like one of your back row destruction cards. Moving on to number 8, Gem Knights. Okay, so again, I wanted to put this deck higher up, and then I realized, oh wait, Brilliant's banned. I thought it was at 1, and then I double checked, and it is banned. And at 1, the deck can make use of Brilliant to an extent, but with Brilliant banned, the deck's a lot harder to really pop off. With that being said, though, Gem Knights have a lot of things going good for them. First and foremost, they have like one of the best archetypal like link monsters, period. Not only does it add a Gem Knight card, but then you can fusion summon using it. It's so good. And you don't even care about its link arrows anymore because the main monster zone is free game for your fusions once again, so you don't need to worry about prioritizing making him first. The OTK and the FTK is also likewise a lot more viable thanks to the fact that you are free to fusion summon as much as you want now. And heck, if you want, you can even have 6 fusion monsters out on your field now, and it's totally viable to do that with Gem Knights. It's really freaky just how much like just monsters they can put on the board thanks to the just insane recycle factor of Gem Knight Fusion, Phantom Quartz, all these other search cards and everything they have, like oh god, what was it called? Absorb Fusion, all that fun stuff. This deck has a lot of things going for it. However, it does have 2 big hindrances. Of course, Brilliant Fusion being banned is really hard on the deck, Brilliant Fusion enabled the deck to cheese out its biggest boss monster, that being Lady Brilliant Diamond, or heck, even cheese out other ones like Seraphinite and, of course, Master Diamond. And, of course, that would then also allow you to get Lapis Lazuli in the graveyard and just be able to just really just pop off of the additions and everything. It really enabled the deck to be able to go even harder. And because of that, the FTK is a lot harder to do. But, however, the OTK is still easy to do, and you can do FTKs from time to time as well. That being said, though, the deck also still suffers from issues with hand traps. Hand traps really do hit this deck hard, getting ashed at a certain key point. Like, for instance, if your opponent ashes Quartz, or if they ash Absorb Fusion, that can, with certain hands, effectively end your turn. Ghost Ogre is also really hard on the deck because that can really screw up the deck's plays. Effect Filler doesn't hurt it as much, but that can stop you from being able to burn your opponent for game with Gem Knight Master Diamond and the Fusion Lapis Lazuli. So hand traps really do hit this deck hard, and if your opponent knows what they're doing and like what to hit with them, yeah, you can your turn can basically effectively end, and this deck has no negation, so it's free game for your opponent to just destroy your board and OTK you themselves. So it is something to be careful about whenever you're playing the deck. Ideally, you'll probably want to play a Called by the Grave or 2, but like you gotta be careful about how many you're playing with those, because then that can be interrupting you from, you know, being able to continue on with your plays. It's a really big balancing act. I'm sure somebody's going to find some way to make this FTK work in this new format. It's just something we got to wait for whenever we can actually play tournaments again to see how that goes. Moving on, another big one that I just had to put on here because I know somebody's going to break it. Okay, Infernity. Everybody knows what Infernity does. Playing with no hand and making mass boards of just absurd, what the hell is this? Big absurdity, that's what. So, this deck did see some initial really big play in the Link era thanks to Firewall Dragon and just the absurd plays and loops that you could do with that. But, however, obviously after Firewall got hit, and also I think Grand Soil was a big part of that FTK as well, that really hindered the deck and everything, preventing it from being able to do much throughout Link format. I'm honestly surprised it didn't do more, especially after we got Barricade Borg Blocker, who can literally recycle Infernity Launcher from your graveyard. You can effectively play 2, maybe even 3 Infernity Launchers again, because you can play, I mean, heck, honestly, you could play 4, because Barricade Borg Blocker is at 3, and you can use that thing's effect as many times as you want. So that is something I can guarantee somebody's going to find a way to abuse. And because of that, and also the fact that this deck is able to make use of links and synchros super effectively, I feel like that this deck is going to see play. Somebody's going to break this deck. I'm putting it at number 7 because hand traps can kill this deck really hard, and it can't use hand traps effectively itself. You just can't, because you got to be able to get them out of your hand, and if you can't just drop them whenever you want, you're kind of screwed. Launcher is still at 1, which is a really big hindrance to the deck, but as I said, Barricade Borg Blocker can recycle it, and that is wonderful. And then the deck can be very big bricky sometimes. which is a bit annoying, so that is something else to consider. But however, this deck is able to fully utilize links and synchros to their like absolute maximum. You can go for a synchro build and really be able to just churn out big negate synchros and do the classic set 3 Infernity break and an Infernity barrier and just go through that wombo combo. Or if you want, you can go for a more link-focused aspect and go for making an extra link. Not that there's really a big point to it anymore, but however, if you do it and you get like the Nightmares and Trigates, Sorcerer and everything, the deck is able to really make scary, impressive boards with link monsters. And I mean, heck, it can still make use of Xyzes, but however, without Lavalval Chain, I don't think the Xyz build is going to see much play. So, due to that, and also the fact that like this deck, I know somebody's going to break it. Somebody does it every time there's a new format, so I'm just anticipating it whenever it decides to happen. So that surprise factor is really big for this deck. Moving on to number 6, I had to put Tenyi. Tenyi got some pretty good support. It's gotten quite a bit of really good support, and it's able to make use of course, all the worm support that has come out in the past few years. This deck has a weird mix of control and beatdown. It's able to go effectively first or second very easily. You kind of prefer going first because the field spell and the counter trap are both really good for setting up boards like that. But also, in that regard, going second is not bad either because this deck is able to really effectively beat down your opponent and go for an OTK thanks to their amazing synchro and of course the other synchro plays you can make. Not to mention their newest Link 4 is really, really good. This deck has really just good boss monsters all around. The main deck monsters all have very, very good utility effects or special summoning effects. And so, all in all, I feel like that this deck has a really good potential for being a really solid rogue deck. To that extent, though, this deck has some issues as well, like with all rogue decks. I mean, every deck has at least some issues, but however, the meta decks practically have none at times. So, looking at Tenyi, the first and foremost is that this deck has very conflicting playstyles. As I said, it can do control and beatdown rather well, but however, sometimes you open hands that lean more to one or the other, and then you're not going first whenever you should be going first, or you're going second when you should be going first. You know, it really, in my experience, like, no matter like what I play with the deck, it seems like sometimes you go first and you have like going second hand, and then sometimes you're going second and you have it going first hand. And I know I'm not the only one who's had that issue. I've seen people complaining about it with Tenyi on forums and stuff. And it is something to keep in mind. So you want to try and put as many draw cards and, of course, consistency boosters in this deck as well. So Desires is a big one. Upstart Goblin's a big one. If you have the money for it, maybe even Extravagance, but maybe not so much on that one because this deck does heavily rely on its extra deck. So it's something to consider for all that. Then also, if you are going second and your opponent has a big mass negate board, it becomes sometimes difficult to break through it. Sometimes the deck can do it pretty well, but sometimes it really can't. So it is something to consider whenever you are going second, and like what the meta is. You got to really consider like what you want to incorporate to be able to effectively go second. Moving on, I had to put Raidraptors at number 5. I love Raidraptors, and this deck got a huge boost thanks to Strix coming out. Strix makes the deck really, really just kind of absurd with the plays it can do. The deck is extremely consistent. Like, honestly, I would say that this is one of the most consistent archetypes I've ever seen in terms of just how they can get to their stuff. The big issue that's always been is that the stuff that they can get to hasn't been very good, but it can get to everything now more effectively than ever. And so this deck can make its boss monster, its real boss monster, Ultimate Falcon, a whole lot easier as well. And Ultimate Falcon is a big, scary bird, and it's very, very difficult for a lot of decks to deal with, so that is something to consider. Additionally, this deck can utilize the Infinite Negation combo, because Konami barely touched it, let's be honest. That negation combo is still capable of being done, and Raidraptors just have to chalk in Avian and Apex Avian. You know, they gotta just throw in the little bird and the big bird, and then some builds already play Zephyros, so you don't even need to throw that in. So it's very, very easy to make, and it just results in very, very annoying boards for your opponent to deal with. There is some things to consider with Raidraptors is that the deck does have some cards that lock you only into Raidraptors, which if you're going for the Infinite Negate combo, you gotta just cut out entirely. It sucks because those cards happen to be very good, like for instance Fuzzy Lanius. That card is like one of the deck's best main deck monsters, but however it locks you into only Raidraptors for the turn you use either of its two effects, which really sucks. And then also the deck is very, very susceptible to hand traps if your opponent knows what to hit. So that can be very, very concerning depending on if you're doing against somebody who knows what to hit with like Ash and Ghost Ogre and stuff like that, as that can very screw up your combo. So that is something to consider as well. Moving on at number 4, I had to put Cyber Dragons. I was really like debating back and forth between Cyber Dragons and Raidraptors, but I feel like Cyber Dragons are just a bit better. They're a bit more consistent, especially since now they have 2 search cards, that being Repair Factory and of course Good O Emergency. They can do OTKs very easily, and they can pick apart boards also very easily thanks to stuff like Mega Fleet and of course good old just the Chimera techs in general, not to mention their high attack powers and just absurd amount of damage they can do, is able to punch through most everything. And of course going first isn't the worst thing in the world, since with certain builds you can even make 2 infinities rather easily, so this deck has a lot going for it in that regard as well. And really, honestly, this whole archetype's basically built to break boards. I gotta be honest. Like, the deck wants to go second, and it's going to, like, just destroy anything it duels against, almost. However, that being said, while yes, the first turn boards you can get out an Infinity or 2, Infinity's not as good as he used to be, and he's basically the deck's only negation, so if you aren't able to hit the key cards, or if you have to get like baited out with like a Regeki or something that you got to drop a negate on, the first turn boards can be very just not great. And honestly, this deck is a very big glass cannon. If the OTK falls through, or if you're not able to just win very quickly, you can you can lose very easily, because this deck has very little grind game, unless unless you draw into like Overload Fusion or something, which even then your opponent's just going to negate it more than likely. This deck has a very difficult grind game, so you got to keep that in mind with this deck. Moving on, at number 3, I had to put at Ignister. It just dawned on me whoever made this proxy put at instead of the at sign, and I hate it. Why'd you do that? You put the at sign. Anyway, so at Ignister, I wanted to put this here in particular because in my experience with the deck and from seeing other people playing, this deck is a very, very consistent, very, very good going second deck that is able to put out monsters that are really difficult for a lot of archetypes to deal with. I'm talking the Arrival at Ignister and Firewall Dark Fluid Dragon. These two are very difficult boss monsters for a lot of decks to deal with Firewall being able to negate monster effects and also being able to jack up its attack power upwards of over 10,000 with very ease. And then you got the Arrival, who can be an average of 4k to 5k, sometimes even a 6k beat stick that's unaffected by card effects and can just pop cards once a turn and get you a free token too, because why the hell not? This deck is able to make very, very impressive boards, and it doesn't even use its actual archetypal extract monsters too often for the boards that it does want to make. So this deck is able to surmise into these big, huge boards of just really, really titanic monsters. However, it's got 2 big weaknesses. If your opponent knows what to hit, getting hit by a hand trap or 2 can really screw up the deck's momentum. This deck, once it gets going, it's just insane with all the special summons. But if your opponent hits the right card, like Pickery or Achichi or actually, no, those are the 2 main ones. Pickery or Achichi, you're kind of screwed because those are your main searchers, and then you're not able to get going with the momentum of this deck. Also, speaking of that, the deck has a bit of a reliance on its field spell. It's not super, super reliant on it because you are able to make boards of like with a Arrival very easily without the field spell, but however, the deck works a lot better with the field spell. It just is able to just pop off a lot easier. The field spell, if you don't know, basically once per turn. Well, actually not once per turn, but you can special summon a Agnister from your hand with a different attribute, provided you have nothing in your main monster zone. So basically, you got to be able to just keep going on with that and keeping stuff out of your main monster zone until you're ready to get out Dark Templar, who will then help you with making the big guys. So it is something to keep in mind with that, because this deck doesn't get any way to be able to get more monsters out without inherently relying on its normal summon. It is able to really just be screwed over. This deck also has more support on the way. I've mentioned the Arrival a few times. Once we get Arrival in May with Eternity Code, this deck's going to be significantly better. So this is really more of a prelude for after we get Eternity Code, because once we get the Arrival, this deck's going to be a lot better. It's going to have like an actual boss monster end goal, getting him out and just kind of winning. Now, of course, if Kaiju see a Rise in play, then yeah, this deck's going to be a bit even, probably a little bit lower. Like if people start playing Kaijus heavily again, this will probably be more like a 5, if I'm being 100% honest, because this deck loses to Kaijus very easily, which is very annoying. So that is something to consider. But overall, I feel like that with what the deck is getting and everything, once we get the stuff that's coming out in Eternity Code, this deck's going to be a pretty solid rogue deck that you can take to a tournament, like whether that be a locals or a regional, and pretty much be able to do relatively well with. I'm just saying. Then we got number 2. I'm going to put Hero. I know some people would probably consider Hero meta, but honestly, I don't feel like it's at that point yet, just yet. It's very, very close, and there's a very good reason for it, because it's honestly one of the best rogue decks, and was probably the best rogue deck to play in the previous format. It's extremely, extremely consistent. Like, I'd say even more consistent than Raidraptors, which is one of the most consistent archetypes I've seen, because this deck, with how you're able to make use of all 5 hero archetypes, I'm not joking, the modern hero builds play Elemental, Destiny, Vision, Evil, Masked. You play all 5 hero archetypes. What the hell? And it's super, super consistent. And all of the time I've played heroes, I only bricked maybe once over the course of the past like 6 months. Like, it's insane. This deck is extremely, extremely consistent. It's able to OTK very, very easily. Getting Sunrise out, getting Malicious Bane out, getting all these big boss monsters out to be able to just decimate your opponent's board and go for big damage is really, really easy. It was easy to do under Master 4, and now that we're under the revision where you don't need to worry about having your links out, you're able to fusion summon even more and just go for even more monsters. It makes the OTK even easier. It's kind of freaky. And then, also, this deck has a surprisingly good grind game. Like, it's able to recur its resources very easily. It's able to make a comeback very easily. You play Miracle Fusion. That's one of the best comeback cards in the game for an archetype. This deck is really, 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 really good. Going second. Okay, let's talk about the some of the negatives. First and foremost, this deck doesn't have a very particularly good going first. I mean, like, your best board going first is, like, Dark Law plus Plasma, and hey, not even every deck plays Plasma, so like really honestly your best thing going first is making Dark Law, or like setting up to make a Dark Law during your opponent's turn and kind of try and surprise them. But let's be honest, they didn't know Dark Law's coming, so it's something to really keep in mind. And then also the hand traps, while they don't completely destroy it like a lot of the lower tier rogue decks that I've mentioned, hand traps do heavily slow this deck down and prevent it from popping off as much as it wants to sometimes. So that is also something to keep in mind. And then also, I know this is probably not a huge negative for some people, especially since, I mean, heck, if you got the money to throw together like a $1,000 meta deck, you probably have the money to buy 1 Malicious Bane and 1 a Dust of Gold and 1 Liquid Soldier. But it's still something I gotta bring up because the prices of the cards are really stupid. Why is Malicious Bane and the Dust of Gold so expensive? Well, blame Konami. That's all I gotta say. So that is something to keep in mind. And then for some honorable mentions that just barely did not make the cut. First and foremost, Ritual Beasts. I really wanted to put Ritual Beasts on here somewhere, but I just couldn't. Otikana Hawk still at 1, and that heavily hinders the deck's performance and ability to play. The deck has some really big shenanigans you can do with it thanks to the time rolls and how long a single turn can last for Ritual Beast. So theoretically, you can basically legitimately cheat your way through a tournament with this deck with how obnoxious it is with how long the turns can take with it. And heck, you just got to do a little bit of burn damage or get your life points a little bit higher than your opponent, and then hey, look at that, time was called, I win, go to. it's something that I'm honestly surprised nobody has tried to take advantage of. Blue Eyes is something else I really want to put on here. Same thing with Galaxy Photon. Both decks are effectively back at full power, and heck, Galaxy Photon has even gotten more support recently. Some really good support too at that. But however, I don't feel like either deck is really just quite there yet. They are able to turn out pretty decent boards with the various really good rank 8s like Felgrand, Titanic Galaxy, I forgot his name, but he's the Galaxy Xyz that can negate monster effects. It kind of really pairs well with with good old Titanic Galaxy. So both decks are about on the same level, and I wouldn't really put either, like they'd be at like number 11 or something. Synchron and Resonator I almost put on here purely because synchros are playable again thanks to the Master revisions, but however, Synchrons and Resonators are also both still heavily lacking, even with the recent support that really benefits both of them. I'm looking at freaking Junk Speeder and the recent stuff out of the recent Duelist pack that also gave like new hero stuff. It's just not quite there yet either. And then I really want to put Madoshe on here because Madoshe, I feel like you're going to sneak wins in somewhere. But however, the deck is just kind of outdated at this point. If the deck gets new support, I feel like it's going to be really good. But however, the deck still suffers heavily from not really having a good going first play. And then while yes, Tiramisu is still like a really, really powerful boss monster, the deck gets kind of destroyed by a lot of the meta decks in my experience. So I just couldn't really put it on here. I just had to put like, it's just like at that edge. Like honestly, I'd probably switch. I'd probably put him at number 11 and just take out Gagaga and put it here. Like it's really tough. Like Madoshe, it's really, really tough because the deck's not quite there yet. But knowing me, now that I've said that, somebody's gonna top with at a regional if we ever get to do regionals again. So first for the first number 1, Fluffals. This deck is. Okay, so first and foremost, this deck, it's getting new support coming out in Rise of the Duelist. Far off, but that's irrelevant. This deck effectively got its own Link monster of Cross Seep, even though it's not its own Link monster, but it might as well be. But even with that, this deck now finally has the full free access to be able to make as many fusions as it wants. This is one of the best going second OTK fusion decks out there because it's extremely consistent. Like I'm talking as almost consistent as Heroes in terms of its consistency, thanks to all the draw support, the searching support, the outside support with being able to just get everything. Fright for Patrick is just flat out amazing still. Fluffal Penguin with his special summon effect and draw 2, discard 1 effect. It's just so consistent and everything, especially with Dog. Like, oh my god, if you open like Toy Vendor, Wings, Penguin, and Dog, it's stupid how consistent this deck is. This deck is very strong OTKs. It's able to pick apart opponents' boards very easily thanks to Tiger, thanks to good old Sheep and everything. It's just able to destroy boards, and heck, this deck is, like, honestly, it's just so good with how consistent it is and how powerful it is with what it can do. As I mentioned, the fusions have complete freedom once again to go to the main monster zone. This deck does, however, have 2 big issues with it that a lot of these OTK going second decks have. It's very much a glass cannon if the OTK falls through, because it tends to put all of its resources into making the OTKs and everything. It can be very difficult to come back or to be able to have a follow-up play if the OTK fails. And then also, it's not entirely good going first. This deck has like 2 really good going first plays, and that's either A, making a Bistro with 2 Penguins, which isn't easy to do since Penguin, while yes, he's a 3-of in a deck, you're not guaranteed to get him out easily with multiple Penguins, because you can't use Penguin's effect to summon another Penguin. But however, sorry, did I say Abyssal? I meant Bahamut Shark, and then you can summon Toad, which is really good, so there's that. But however, just one Toad is not going to be enough. You need to have something else to back that up as well. And honestly, the deck doesn't have like any sort of negation other than making Toad. So you got to rely on hand traps or back row, and that's not something you really want to heavily rely on whenever you're going first, and it's something you got to be careful about because this deck just does not have very heavily good going first place. So that is something to keep in mind. But however, I feel like this deck overall, with just how consistent it is, with how good the fusions are, with just how much of a fan base there is, this deck has a borderline cult following. Okay, it's kind of warning. I get the feeling that somebody is gonna like top with it, and then everybody's gonna flood with it. Like, it's just gonna be insane. And then, you know, we got the hype with the new support, but that's again not coming out until like August for us, because I think Residuos is our August set. But it's still something to keep in mind for, like, in the back of your head, that this is a really strong contender for a really good rogue deck. That, who knows, maybe with the new support might even become meta, but that's, again, not until August. But I digress. And then you knew this deck was going to be on here. DDD. I almost want to say this deck might become meta. Okay? DDD is back at full power, effectively. Okay? Just think about that. And heck, even then, it's got the new support throughout Master 4 that it wasn't able to fully use. And this deck is scary with the boards it can make. The deck can do the infinite combo, the infinite negate combo. It can do it even better too, because it can get out other stuff to go along with it, like Titanic Galaxy, good old Cypher Lord Omega, and other really good synchros and everything. It's able to make even just ignoring the infinite negate combo, it's able to make impressive boards, like scarily really good boards. I'm talking with like Crystal Wing, Titanic Galaxy, tons of other stuff that I can't think of off the top of my head, along with just being able to follow up and everything. This deck has really good grind game. It's able to OTK effectively. It has really strong back row. Is able to fully utilize hand traps better than other Pendulum decks. It has a really freaking good link, even though it does lock in only DDDs. So it's typically a a end of combo make, because then you can use its effect and then get out some of the DDD extra deck monsters, or set up your pendulum skills to use them during the next turn, and it just results in a perfect maelstrom of absurdity with how good this deck is. The only things that I can really say in terms of like downsides to it is that it can have the occasional awkward hands. I'm not saying like complete and total bricks, because it really kind of doesn't have like a true bricky hand. You just get awkward hands that aren't particularly great, but aren't bad either. Like, you just make a subpar board instead of a really good board. And then it gets if your opponent knows what to hit with hand traps, with like Ash and Effect Filler and everything, this deck can get severely hindered by hand traps and everything. So that is something else to keep in mind, especially if like DD Crow's in the main deck, or if it's game 2 or in the side DD Crow. DD Crow destroys this deck if they know what to hit. So overall, I feel like the DDD is by far the best rogue deck to play if you want to play rogue, especially since there's a decent chance this deck might get picked up as a potential meta deck, or like not even just meta, but like a potential like a low tier, high tier. I don't know what do you call it, at like sweet spot between low tier and high tier? I don't know, mid tier, I guess. Whatever, a mid boss deck, I guess. This deck is really on that verge, and I feel like somebody's gonna break it. If anything that I have seen on the DDD Facebook groups that I follow and everything is to show, I get the feeling this deck's gonna get broken very easily very soon. And once we get back to being able to do regionals again, we might see the deck really start topping. It's something that I really want to say, but at the same time, like with all these rogue decks, I can't say for certain. I'm trying my best to analyze these rogue decks in conjunction with the meta, but it's really hard to say. So I digress. What do you guys think about this list? I feel pretty confident over most of what I've said here. The only one that I would say really that like I'd be worried about is like that like I'm probably dead wrong on is probably Tenyi and Gagaga as decent fun rogue decks, but I digress. What do you guys think? Thank you all for watching. Have a great day. It's your birthday. Happy birthday, and see you all later. Peace out. Thank you all for watching the video. Have a great day. It's your birthday. Happy birthday. Rate, comment, and subscribe, and see y'all later.